Bonjour and welcome back to Art Theories. This week we're going to be talking about Marcel Duchamp, aka Toilet Guy. Marcel Duchamp is an artist who is often described as being very objective, very logical. He was a chess player. He's the man who single-handedly destroyed classical painting using facts and logic and ushered in conceptual art. He made ideas more important than visual beauty. And all that is true. Marcel Duchamp was very talented and he had a huge impact on modern art. But there's more to the story. You see, Marcel Duchamp had an obsession. It wasn't even a low-key obsession, it was a high-key obsession. It was always there, hiding in plain sight. Marcel Duchamp was obsessed with sex and with gender. And you may be thinking, that's completely fine. In fact, that's pretty normal. Like, most artists are obsessed with sex and gender. In fact, isn't Western art history just the history of men painting naked women? Well, you're right. But, you see, Marcel Duchamp was kind of misogynistic, and often he made art that was just very creepy. Let me give you an example. So Marcel Duchamp was born near Rouen in Normandy, France. But in 1904, he moved to Paris to pursue a career as an artist. But Marcel Duchamp didn't initially go for fine art. He was hanging out in the cafes in Paris with a group of guys called the caricaturists. Basically, they hung out in the cafes, did drawings, got drunk, chatted. Sounds like a laugh. Anyway, let me show you a drawing that Marcel Duchamp did in 1907, 3 years after moving to Paris. It's called Femme Cochère, female driver, and you need a little bit of backstory for this drawing to make sense. Basically, the French feminist suffragette movement of the time had been fighting for women to be allowed to drive taxis as a profession, and the law got changed in 1907, so French women were now allowed to be taxi drivers. In this drawing, Marcel Duchamp has depicted an empty taxi, and the meter has been left running, and it's outside of a hotel. And I think the implication of this drawing is that female taxi drivers are also offering sexual services, or that, to be honest, I don't really know, but it doesn't look good. Let's see example number 2. This drawing was done in 1910 and it's called Bébé Marcel. So in Paris around that time, children's dolls were really popular, and the latest children's dolls were advertised in magazines, and the magazines would have a picture of the doll and it would say like all the different things that the doll could do. Like it could blink, it can cry, it can hiccup, I don't know. Anyway, so Marcel Duchamp has drawn a doll, like a child doll, and instead of listing like the things it can do, being like crying and hiccuping, it says like, she undresses completely, she's perfect for the elderly gentleman. So that's kind of what I mean when I say he could be a bit creepy. But you know what? Marcel was still in his early 20s, and most men in their early 20s are a bit problematic, let's say. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt. I want to assume that as he gets older, hopefully he will come to his senses. Let's see what he does next. So the year is 1911, and Cubism is everything in Paris. It's gone crazy. It's the only thing that all the artists are talking about. And Marcel Duchamp, he's kind of bored of being a caricaturist. He wants to be taken a bit more seriously by the art world. So he himself turns to Cubism. In 1912, he paints Bride, which is kind of a confusing painting. It's kind of like some sort of machine, but with like organic parts. And then in the same year, he also paints this painting called From Virgin to Bride. I don't know, like, it's hard to interpret this painting, but based on the titles of the work, we know that it's an interest in, like, young women. Anyway, so there's that aspect of it. And there is some speculation that these machines are in some way sexual. If that is true, then these paintings aren't actually that different from Marcel's drawing he did, Bébé Marcel, a few years earlier. They are both depicting women in some literal ways and some coded ways as sexual machines. And then In 1912, Marcel Duchamp paints his first really important painting. It's called Nude Descending Down the Stairs, and it's an individual walking down the stairs in the Cubist style. Marcel Duchamp submits Nude Descending Down the Stairs in the Salon des Indépendants, and basically the judges think it's trash and they're like, we're not accepting this. Marcel gets really upset by that. He's really offended and annoyed. He withdraws his painting, even though it's already been rejected, and he goes on this big tirade, and he's like, I am sick and tired of visual art. I'm sick and tired of art that's all about the eye, all about beauty. I want to make art that's about ideas. I'm going to make art that's different, better than this. Forget Cubism, I'm done. Shortly after that, Marcel Duchamp moves to New York City. He does this because World War I is happening and he doesn't want to get bombed. So he's in New York City and he's annoyed. He's pissed off because his painting got rejected by the Salon des Indépendants. And he locks himself away in the studio. He's like, I'm going to make something crazy, something anti-eye. It's going to be something not for the eye. Art has been all about eye and beauty and the pleasure of seeing all the way since Gustave Courbet in France. I'm going to change this. I am the revolution in art. That's what he's saying. And he locks himself away for 8 years in the studio. No one really knows what he's doing in there. He's hacking away. He feels like he's onto something. He's got this crazy idea. And then he's like, guys, I've done it. Come see my art. And basically he's made the weirdest and most incomprehensible artwork in art history. It's called The Bride Stripped Bare by Her Bachelors, but everyone calls it the large glass, so I'm going to be calling it the large glass. The first thing I'm going to point out about this artwork is that it's confusing. The artwork was never finished, but after 8 years, Marcel published the artwork and declared it was permanently unfinished. And then after the artwork was bought, it was being transported, I think, to Brooklyn, and the glass smashed, and basically he said the smashed glass is part of the artwork now. So that's that. And if you don't understand this artwork, don't worry about it, because literally no one understands this artwork. So at this point, Duchamp was feeling a little bit defeated, I think, because, well, his Cubist painting had been rejected in Paris, and now he'd made this really confusing artwork called The Large Glass, and it did sell, and there were some curators and collectors who were interested in it, but on the whole, I don't really think people got it, because it was just really confusing. And after making such a long artwork, after spending 8 long years trying to do this thing which just wasn't quite working, he finally had his breakthrough. You see, Marcel Duchamp was also coming up with this new idea. He was really big on anti-visual art, so he didn't want art to be for the pleasure of the eye. He wanted art to be about ideas. And one day he screwed a bicycle wheel onto a stool in his studio, and he declared it a ready-made. Now, this artwork was really important because, well, he didn't make it. I mean, he screwed the bicycle wheel to the stool, but he didn't make the bicycle wheel and he didn't make the stool. And at the time, that was really significant. That was really important because artists were expected to make their own work. After this, he buys a bottle rack and turns it upside down, and he calls that his art as well. And everyone in New York's like, phew. And Marcel was actually drawing on a lot of ideas that were coming out of the Dada movement in Europe. And that was basically all about art which was against authority and art that was anti-art, art that was rebellious, all this stuff. We'll talk about Dada in a bit more detail in the future, but you just need to know that he was taking a lot of inspiration from that. And then he came out with his bombshell artwork, the artwork that really just changed the game, changed everything. He submitted a fountain to the Exhibition of Independence, which was a similar thing to the Salon des Indépendants in France. Basically, you pay a fee, it's quite a small fee, I think, and you're allowed to exhibit an artwork. So Marcel was like, okay, I'm going to pay the fee and I'm going to submit this sculpture. It's called Fountain, and it's literally a urinal that I bought from a plumbing shop. I've turned it upside down and I've submitted it under the name Art Mutt. Now, this was pretty controversial, and the curators of the independent show were like, absolutely not. This is immoral. There is no way we are submitting this in our exhibition. And Marcel was like, I paid the fee. You said I could submit anything. Let me submit this urinal. Basically, he wasn't allowed to submit the urinal. But he did take the urinal back. He asked his good friend, the photographer Man Ray, to take photos of it. And he published it with a defense of the artwork in the Dada publication called The Blind Man. Now, this went like sort of the equivalent of viral at the time in the intellectual circles of America and Europe. Everyone was talking about it. It was a big deal. It was like this brand new approach to art making where you don't make the art, you just pick the art. You go, that's an artwork, and you can submit it. And that was considered a really big deal. On top of this, his painting, Nude Descending the Staircase, was actually becoming quite popular in the United States. So Marcel Duchamp was finally getting the recognition he deserved. And his art had stopped being creepy. Well, yeah, it stopped being creepy. I mean, the urinal is still very much a gendered object. People talk about the urinal as if he kind of picked it out the blue, like he might have picked anything. But he didn't. He picked a urinal, which is the most gendered thing you can pick. So the theme of gender is still there. And the way I think of it, like, when Marcel Duchamp submitted the urinal, he kind of planted a seed, and it took quite a long time for that seed to grow, but it eventually grew into what we understand to be conceptual art which is about ideas, not visuals. So it was really, really important. So after killing it, after just doing an amazing job, becoming hyper successful in New York, just like living that artist life, Marcel got a bit overly confident, and the next thing he made was pretty rubbish. He bought a sort of a knockoff painting of the Mona Lisa. He drew a mustache and a beard on her, and he inscribed the painting with the words LHOOQ, which, if you say it in French, sounds like you're saying she's got a hot ass. So after a brief spell of not making creepy art, we're right back in the world of making creepy art again. In my personal opinion, like, there just isn't anything good about this artwork. Like, it's very childish and immature, and it's like, just what makes this good? Why does anyone like this? Why is it in all the art history books? So at some point, Marcel Duchamp goes back to Paris. The war is over, everything's chill, he's back in France. Anyway, what Marcel Duchamp did next was quite unexpected. He created an alter ego, a woman called Rose Slevy, which is kind of like, is it an acronym? I don't know, where it's like, it's a pun, I think, because it's like Rose c'est la vie, which means pink is life. My French is a bit rusty. If I have any French speakers, help me out in the comments, please. Anyway, so now he's dressing up as this very glamorous French old lady, and he gets his friend Man Ray to take these photos of him, which I think are great. And he even creates a sort of a spoof perfume brand with Slevy Rose's picture on it. Personally, I think that this is a much more healthy way to explore gender, because it's more about him and how he wants to express himself or explore his gender expression, rather than kind of resorting to objectifying or sexualizing other people. So yeah, for me, I think this was actually quite a healthy step for Marcel, because clearly, like, we know he was really interested in this stuff, but I think it can be done in a way that's creepy, or it can be done in a way that's healthy, and I would say this is a bit healthier. Anyway, after this, Marcel Duchamp, like, he's done a lot of stuff, some good, some bad, but fundamentally he has made a huge impact on the art world in Paris and in New York, and he's sown the seeds for this whole new genre of art to be born. And he's bored. He's like, guys, I just want to play chess. So basically that's what he does. He hangs out in Paris and he plays chess. And every now and then he makes an artwork. And the artworks he makes in this period are actually really good. He bottles up some Parisian air and sends it to one of his collectors in New York. He also threads like a mile of string around this exhibition, which must have been really annoying for all the painters who just wanted people to look at their work, and now they can't because Marcel Duchamp has threaded string throughout the room. And he also hung like, I don't know how many, like thousands of coal bags along the roof of another exhibition. So he was doing really cool stuff, and he was kind of pioneering installation art, which was great. And then he's just like, he's done. He's tapped out. He just wants to play chess and chill out. So that's what he does. And then, in 1968, Marcel Duchamp passes away. But then we discover that he's actually been working on a secret artwork for 20 years. It's called Étente Donnée, and the only person who knew about it was his wife. This is the artwork. It's a wooden door, and as you walk up to the wooden door, there's a hole in the door. I think it's like a keyhole. You look through the keyhole, and this is what you see. Honestly, I would say we're kind of back to square one, because, like, I know the nude is a very common theme in Western art history, but he's made the decision to cover the woman's head, and she's in this certain posture which is kind of sexual, and she just kind of looks like she's passed out. So in my opinion, I would say this is another creepy artwork. I guess you could say it's not a surprise because, you know, he's been doing this for a while, and literally Western art history is just loads of this kind of art. It's just Marcel Duchamp has done it as an installation, whereas most people up until this point did it as paintings. So yeah, Marcel Duchamp made some really significant artworks and fundamentally changed art history forever, but he was also kind of a creepy dude. So anyway, there it is. There's my history of Marcel Duchamp through the lens of sex and gender. Thanks for watching to the end. My Patreon is in the description. Also, please like and subscribe. I'm going to be back soon with more videos.